All right. Cool. Thanks, Rob. All right. Well, I know the first thing you guys are asking probably is, what is PubNub? So we like to say at PubNub, you probably have PubNub on your phone and you don't even know it. We are the real-time infrastructure that powers any of your low latency applications on your phone. You probably didn't get it when I said that either. So think about late last night when you got back from the party and you said, I could really use one of those California burritos from the taco stand, and you ordered delivery. When you watched that delivery driver and you watched him creep toward your apartment, he was sending real-time messages from his application in his car right back to your phone. And when you were chatting him and saying, "Are you here yet? Are you here yet?" that was also some real-time messages going back. We power that in addition to applications. Maybe you had to shut your garage door, turn on your light at home, lock your door. Those are all real-time messages. Maybe you're a big gamer and you watch yourself go up and down the leaderboard. Every single movement there is happening in real time. So PubNub, really, we're processing millions of transactions, API calls, every single second, trillions per month, that really allow you to do that real-time engagement through apps and software platforms. We do this all across a variety of different industries. We run a global infrastructure with 5 regions all around the world so that we can have less than a quarter of a second latency to all of our customers. We run a cloud application. We're primarily on AWS, and we run it all with a relatively small FinOps team. So you can imagine there's quite a bit of challenges with an on-demand real-time application. We can have, really, it leads me to a couple of our cost challenges. When you're doing something on demand, you have highly variable workloads. Last night, we could have had one of our customers launch an indie game that goes viral overnight, or one of our customers might have done a shoe drop and had a bunch of different watchers. These things can happen at any given time during our infrastructure, which makes it really difficult for us to be able to forecast and predict, especially anything under 12 months. The other thing that's quite challenging for us is we're doing this with a small team. Now, we're at FinOps-X. We're seeing all the coolest products. You can go down on the expo floor. You can see all sorts of tools that will help you with observability and what's happening with your infrastructure. But regardless, when you're looking at 3,000 T3 micros and you're trying to figure out whether or not those are going to be used for 15 days, 3 months, 4 years, you can imagine that that is just a difficult thing that still requires you to have some business judgment on. So while you can surface things, you still need to make real decisions. And doing that with a small team, even with all of our agent friends that we have now, you still need to, it ultimately comes down to difficult decisions and forecasting. Which kind of leads me to the third prong of this, what I call like the triangle of pain, which is this fear of wasted spend. And this is kind of a two-sided problem. On one hand, you're watching on-demand spend and you're paying just gobs of money at a premium, which is a problem. On the other hand, you're tempted to overcommit or commit yourself and make sure, but then you run the risk of overcommitting. We've had previous bad experiences where despite like the best forecast, besides the best alignment, all of the decisions by committee involving our CEO, our CFO, myself, engineering directors, we finally came down to that multi-million-dollar 1 to 3 year commit. Felt so good about it. And then our engineering team 6 months later decided to rebuild one of our services in Rust and become more performant. And we're like, darn, okay, good, but darn. So then you have to watch those commitments, that unused commitment every single month. So, that really kind of brought us to this point where we were spending so much time deliberating. There was a lot of wasted energy, a lot of poor forecasting going on. So at a certain point about 2 years ago, we decided we need to go to market and see if we can solve some of this problem, see if we can address some of this short-term challenge that we're having. So we needed 5 different things we were really going to market looking for. Number one is flexibility. We could not be restricted to these 1 to 3 year commitments that are often available on the major cloud providers. It was just too long. Our development cycles are fast, our customers change daily, events happen. We needed that flexibility to be able to do something shorter. We also didn't want all the risk. You know, it's scary when you go on there and say you're going to spend tens of millions of dollars and commit to services for 3 years. We needed to release some of that fear and be able to move quickly. So transferring some of that commitment risk with a partner was also critical. We also needed to be able to do this with our FinOps-team. We did not want to have engineering be involved in every single decision. I'm sure some of you guys can appreciate trying to figure out the source of some sort of cloud spend and creating a Jira ticket that goes somewhere into a Jira black hole, never to be seen again, when that's probably the right thing to do, frankly. Your engineering team should be spent on developing product that helps drive revenue. And so number 4 is we needed it to also just provide real savings. So, 1 to 2% was not going to cut it. The benefit of these long-term commitments that you get through the cloud providers are their substantial discounts, nearly half or more in some cases. We needed to find something in the middle that was materially meaningful that would impact our margins, impact our spend, but also trade some of the risk with the partner. It also needed to be simple to operate. So with a small FinOps team, we needed to be able to surface and discover and highlight areas of potential commitment and how we could eventually use those things to commit to on those shorter periods. So bringing that and exposing this, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to reserve databases or things in some of these, and you have to pick that it's a certain size, a certain database type in a certain region. It is just not easy. It's not fast to do. And tools can surface that, but then you come back to the same problem of deciding, do you keep it or not? And so along our journey, that's where we met Sarah and her team at Archera, and they really helped us address some of these risks that we have. So, Sarah?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what Archera delivered for PubNub in their journey. So when coming to Archera, we were able to deliver 30-day guaranteed terms. And what this did was PubNub was never left holding stranded, unused spend ever again. We're at the billing layer only, so there are no infrastructure changes that need to happen when they go to achieve these savings, which means, to James's point, no engineering tickets, and 1-year terms that actually beat the native cloud provider savings they were achieving, as well as an option to automate the whole thing to alleviate the pain of having a small FinOps team, allowing them to free up time for more important decisions. And so you may be asking, well, what does Archera solve? So Archera solves quite a few things. And when we look at this, Archera's biggest driver and benefit, in my opinion, to a FinOps practitioner is the risk of overcommitment. As someone that's been in your shoes before, I know that fear of going in to make a commitment and wondering if we're going to need to make a change, and I'm the person that just committed us to $1 million that's going to go unused. Archera can take that risk off for you. So there's no more risk of overcommitment that you need to be worried about. We also activate commitments in one click. So you may be used to FinOps tools that give you the savings opportunity and recommendation, but you have to go log into another platform, to your cloud provider, to go action. We do it all within our platform. You see a savings opportunity you like, you click Apply Plan, those savings hit your environment, and you can move on with your day. And we also offer free visibility. This is something we give away for free at the top level. So if you want top level visibility into where your spend drivers lie, you can get that visibility in Archera. We also offer free forecasting, free budget tracking to actual spend, as well as multi-cloud commitment strategy. So if you're a multi-cloud shop, we can support all the hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, GCP, and also a very unique feature we have is free auto-renewal of your expiring commitments. So I don't know about you, but sometimes you may open your bill and notice all of a sudden you have a spike. And it could be because you had a commitment that was expiring and you simply missed it. So with Archera, you can actually set up auto-renewals, and on the date that that commitment is set to expire, it'll actually auto-renew with whichever terms you've selected. So why Archera? Let's talk about 4 things that nobody else offers. The number one is the risk guarantee. If your usage drops and your commitments go unused, Archera will cover the delta. We have 2 options to release that risk. That's either a money-back guarantee or a full release. So if you don't need the commitment anymore, you can go ahead, move on to whatever you need, and we'll absorb that risk for you so you can move on and make whatever decisions you need to make for your business. We also offer flexibility in terms that native cloud providers just don't offer, and that is a 30-day term. So this is something you can get from Archera alongside our 1-year savings and native 3-year commitments. Well, some of you might be saying, well, I can get 1-year commitments from one of our cloud providers. Why would I get it from Archera? The reason is we can actually oftentimes offer deeper savings than you can get from your native cloud providers. And I'll talk about the how in just a minute. But one of the last things I want to mention is our free automation. You don't have to pay to forget it, to commit and forget. You can turn on our automation as it identifies new on-demand spend that you can apply commitments to based on your policies. We'll automatically apply that. And we also have automation that can identify if a commitment goes underutilized and either rebate you or fully release you from the commitment if it's not being utilized. So some of you may be sitting here thinking, this sounds too good to be true. How is Archera making money? How am I saving? So if we look here at the savings rate versus the on-demand rate in this table, you can see here a 30-day guaranteed commitment with Archera, just looking at our guaranteed reserved instance variant, has a net savings of about 30%. If we look at the gross discount, that's 43%. So you can see Archera takes 13% as a risk premium, and the remainder of the savings go to you. Now, if you look at the comparison of a 1-year native savings plan, you can see the savings are relatively the same. However, you have an 11-month lower commitment. But if that's, for whatever reason, something you'd like to do, you can do that in the Archera platform, and we charge you $0 to do that. Now, if we look here at the 1-year Archera GRI option, you can see net savings at about 35%. And if we look here at the gross savings, that's a 44% discount. So you can see the Archera premium would be 9% in this scenario. So you can see the longer you can commit, the lower the risk is to Archera, therefore the lower the risk premium will be. So we have a mechanism to do this, and the way we're doing this is actually under the hood, there are 3-year standard reservations. We apply a risk, guarantee insurance type of offering that allows you to actually break out of the commitment at either the 30-day or the 1-year term. Archera charges the risk premium for that flexibility, and the remainder of the savings will go to you. So that's how we're able to get you those deeper savings in the scenario of a 1-year GRI. So let's talk a little bit about what Archera actually is and what it's not. So Archera is a guarantee layer on top of your own cloud commitment. So if you're leveraging an EDP, you can actually get savings on top of that. We are a way to purchase commitments in your own account. You fully own these commitments. And we're a financial backstop. So if usage drops and commitments go unused, Archera will actually cover that cost delta, not you. And we're also a platform to automate commitment management across your cloud portfolio. And lastly, we're a way to access shorter-term 30-day commitments that native providers just don't offer. And let's talk a little bit about what Archera is not. Archera is not a reseller. We are not a broker or an intermediary. We are not arbitrage or a margin-taking layer. We are not a third party who holds your commitments, and we are not changing any of your infrastructure or cloud architecture, nor do we have permission to do so. And lastly, we are not a replacement for your CSP relationships. We are there to help complement them and have relationships with them ourselves and can holistically support you better.
Super. Thanks, Sarah. So this was like a big mind shift for us. Like, you know, kind of if I think about like where we were before, everything in our mind was thinking in these 1 to 3 year commitments. The forecasting was very low confidence. And you really, you know, frankly, you never felt totally good about it. You were always worried that you were going to be on one side of that issue I mentioned earlier of it being overcommitted or other. And that's just the nature of when you look at things long term. You know, when we discovered the Archera product, we really had to start thinking about our this mind shift in kind of a really different way. We needed to think about how our commitments could be broken up into like kind of a spectrum of purchases versus a single one-time buy. We also had to think about like what does that mean for our forecasting? Like how do we forecast differently knowing that we have this optionality now ahead of us? And knowing that we don't have, and we're not tied to these very long commitments that we were always, you know, that always kind of slowed down our ability to make decisions. And so, you know, as we kind of processed that and thought about, well, what is our like 2B model going to look like? We kind of looked at our stack and kind of broke it out into a layering strategy. And so, you know, when I think about it, you know, if I'm looking at the top of that snowy peak of our usage, you know, this is what we're agreeing. We're just going to say this is true on demand. These are the spikes and unknowns that we see every single day. This could be a Black Friday event. This could be somebody doing something on our system that we really don't know, could come out of anywhere. That's just the nature of our business. That's the nature of human behavior, humans using these real-time apps. They can really cause any type of traffic spike like this. And for that, you know, we keep a chunk of our forecasting on demand. And we don't apply any commitments or anything like that as appropriate. On the kind of bottom, if I think about kind of the low tide, the layer 3 is really our base commitment. So these are all the infrastructure that our system is running on. So it's all of our Kubernetes pods and our databases and all that capacity that we're used to seeing and that we know we need to keep online for daily fluctuations. You know, even as the sun moves, we see those kind of changes in usage. And so we know what those are. Those forecasts are easy to make, easy to decide on. There's a history, and it's firm. We're able to lock those types of commitments in that layer of our infrastructure, which is probably, you know, typically 70 to 75% of our infrastructure, in these higher discount commits, whether it be these 1 year Archeras that Sarah just mentioned, or even occasionally doing native 3 year commitments for the maximum for those workloads we can actually we can decide on. The real new area of our layering is really this layer 2. This is the, I would say, known spikes that are just part of our natural movement of our business. These are maybe known seasonal events. Maybe it's the World Cup starting tomorrow, right? We're going to see a lot of traffic from live watch parties and DAZN and these types of companies. And It could even be things like we're going to roll out a new product, and we need to see what the infrastructure is going to look like. You know, there's optimizations as you roll out different things. There's also planned deployments where you might run two pieces of infrastructure in parallel, right? To ensure the new infrastructure is working as expected, and you're going to typically carry on demand for that type of spend. Using these 30-day commitments, we're able to safely go ahead and lock in some savings and know that we can easily spin these down during the next billing cycle. It requires very little discussion with outside parties to figure that out. And so that's great. The risk has been completely reduced for us in that second layer there, and we tend to keep about 15 to 20% of our infrastructure about in that layer and that level of commitment. You might be kind of just thinking yourself, maybe, hopefully, some of this stuff is resonating with you guys, and you know, everybody here, I have no doubt, has some sort of FinOps tool they're using to manage their cloud spend. If you don't, there's a whole ton of them downstairs you should go check out. These tools, almost without exception, will be able to show you what that opportunity cost is. You should be able to look and calculate what that on-demand spend and where you might be able to apply some of these short-term commitment considerations. This is also where another key FinOps practice and a thing that most of these tools do well, and this is tagging and attribution, right? So when you have this kind of on-demand spend, it's very helpful to know where it's coming from. Is it this particular product? Is it this service? Is it a customer? Is it in a region? You might have virtual or real tags you're using to track these different things. And that really leads us into the second step of this framework, which is being able to categorize your workload. So once you have that attribution in these financial operations systems, you can look at that on demand and ask yourself, you know, is this happening because of a customer event? And how long will it go for? How long will this deployment be in, and will need to run redundant systems? Is this new product going out, and how long will it be doing that for? When there's this uncertainty, and this is that layer 2 in the last diagram I show you, this is where those 30-day commitments are important. That's really where you get a chance to get that savings on something and apply that to the attribution. Once you get sophisticated and you're understanding those 3 different layers, and you know, everybody's gonna have their own mix. You know, you might have a different mix of what your low tide is and what your middle layer 2 is, and you know, maybe you're a company that has very, very little of that spiky traffic. But when you get that maturity and you know where you are, that's when you can really use some of the automation that Sarah was talking about. You know, things evolve, and when you're able to select things and have the system automatically monitor when databases go down and utilization goes to 0, you can set rules in these tools to automatically sell some of these shorter term commitments. On the flip side, you can also imagine that if you're like a lot of great companies, you know, your usage is continuing to grow. So your base is not necessarily just static in that year, right? That percentage hopefully keeps growing for you. Your usage keeps growing, and therefore all your cloud spend keeps growing. A tool like this, Archera, you can actually set these kind of measurements in it and say, hey, when our monthly savings is getting up to $20,000, you know, let's have it automatically buy some database savings plans. Let's have it automatically buy some compute savings plans. Let's have it auto book. That does a couple things, right? It gives you the ability to save immediately, and then maybe you have a monthly FinOps cadence that you're like reviewing that. So when you step back and look at your stack, you might see these kind of percentages change. So you might see that middle layer 2, you might, well, boy, we're getting a lot of these shorter term commitments. That's when you start to make the decision and say, well, now we have a pretty clear track record. Maybe that product is sticky. Maybe that customer is launched and it's sticking. Maybe it's time to convert some of these 30 to that bottom level, into that level 3, and go into the 1-year commitments. So that's when you're reaching kind of that third step in this framework, and you're kind of getting sophisticated in your layering. So with all this process, we had some fantastic results. And Archera has really been instrumental in improving our margins, reducing our engineering and cloud spend. And it's funny, Archera has kind of become ubiquitous in some of our monthly business reviews when our engineering team will talk about, well, we had to launch, we had some extra spend here during the month related to maybe a product deployment or a large event, but we used Archera. So the team is now, funny enough, uses that term like a short-term savings term. But the results are really in the numbers. Our on-demand spend, which was originally 20 to 15%, now down under 5 is our goal. In our first year of using Archera, we spent well over $500,000 in just raw cost and savings. And then there's kind of the soft productivity savings, all those kind of smoky room meetings where you're trying to decide how many tens of millions of dollars you want to commit to your cloud provider, all those forecasts, all those what ifs, is that customer going to grow? Well, how does that offset against that potential new product we're launching? All these different ups and downs. All that deliberation really comes down to just thinking about it in those long-term base layer commits. That middle section, those layer 2 and 1, those go out of the discussion because now they can be automatically reserved. You can automatically get those savings with low risk, all driven by your FinOps team. And those are wins. Those meetings, I'm sure a lot of you have had them. They're not fun. They're exhausting because, again, they're imperfect. So, it kind of comes back to there's a few key takeaways for us. When I think about that triangle of pain that I discussed earlier, on one hand, we had this high demand, the nature of our service, the shifting customer demand. We were able to solve that with shorter term commits, offloading the commitment with our partner, Archera. We were able to solve that other prong of the triangle of pain with the tools such as bringing up visibility of where we could commit, where we could find additional savings. The risk transfer was moved off of us onto our partner. And then the third step, was that decision-making process. Being able to quickly automate, to be able to quickly save money, reduced all that backroom decision-making and allowed us to quickly save. So we've been really thrilled about our partnership, and it's been great. And happy to take any questions, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Yes.
I'm new to Archera, so I was kind of Googling while you were talking.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, so I just I was trying to understand the mechanics behind it, and it was basically like an insurance product, is that correct?
You can think of it like an insurance product. We're technically not. We are third-party reinsurer backed. But yes, it's essentially conceptually like insurance. So we add on that guarantee for you. So if any event, something changes, and you made a decision that no longer is true or holds, we'll go ahead and release you from that commitment or rebate you via our insurance. Yes.
So I guess my question is, if someone purchases the 1-year commitment directly through the cloud provider, how do you get the discount if we're directly purchasing? And then real quick, a follow-up question. If we were to file the claim, so to speak,
Yes.
Would the premium eventually go up the number of times you do that?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked that because that's a very common misconception. So first on the claims element, your premium never goes up. It's unlimited claims, does not affect what you pay to Archera. And the other item you mentioned was if I get a 1-year commitment via the cloud provider, that does not insure you. What insures you is procuring through Archera. So you would need to come to Archera, make the commitment purchase in Archera, and with that, if you select the insured commitment versus the native, then you will have that insurance. Great question.
Just thinking,
A little close.
kind of thinking about this operationally. Let's say we're underutilized for like a month or two, such that we're eligible for those rebates,
Yes.
but then our usage happens to go back up by month 3.
Right.
How does, how does that work operationally?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So it depends. We have 2 release options, right? So if you did the pure sellback option, on that initial drop, you can actually go ahead and release the commitment fully. Once we see that that on-demand spend becomes eligible again for a commitment, you can go ahead and procure a new commitment. If you have automation on, it'll automatically do that and release for you as well. However, if you have the rebate option, you will get rebated for that underutilization until the spike comes back up where you have usage. Then in that period, you won't get rebated. However, if it drops again, you'll get rebated, and you can keep that in the Archera account to use towards future premiums, or you can actually transfer it out into your own bank account via ACH transfer.
A couple of questions. So you mentioned buying the product, your tool, obviously, but I could buy a standard, like 1-year plan, or I could buy through the platform. Is the price difference?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. Do you mind repeating that?
I'm sure. Sorry. If I buy through the platform, is it the same price, like on a 1-year savings plan?
Great question. If you get a native commitment, it's the same price you would see in the native cloud platform.
But what if I want the insured 1-year savings plan?
Great
Is there a
question.
premium on that?
There is a premium, and it varies based on whether you have a 30-day term or a 1-year term, and that can vary from 9 to 13% for your risk premium. One thing I didn't mention is we are a completely free SaaS platform. So if you're ever curious what your savings could be, you can actually onboard for free, see what you can save, and if it makes sense to apply the insurance for you or not. And if you don't apply any insurance, completely free.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then a different question. So how does your tool incorporate something like a convertible RI or those kind of,
Great question.
or the RI marketplace, or,
Yeah.
things at Microsoft, et cetera?
Great question. So we are actually offering 1-year convertibles through our open source project. So you can get that through us as well. And you had a second part. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just if I buy like a 1-year RI, like I could just take that to the AWS RI marketplace. So does
But
your
it-
tool incorporate that?
Great question. So we do release you via an RI marketplace. The caveat when you go to the AWS marketplace to do a sellback, it is a best effort sellback. It's not a guarantee. You don't know what price you're going to get. With Archera, there's no questions asked. You're released within, a few, like I think 3 business days max. You're released, and there's no matter of if and at what price. It's automatic, guaranteed.
If we're already holding some underutilized committed use discounts, would we be able to use Archera on those, or is it just for new commitments that we would make?
For new.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing I think that was great that Sarah mentioned is that really kind of helped us is because it's a no access, no paywall there, you can quickly just go on. You need to set up a few IAM rules, of course, at least on AWS, but you can turn it on and see what it's capable of, which was, I think, really useful for us because then we could kind of see what options are out there and what kind of things is it surfacing. So that was really beneficial to us, I'd say.
Other questions? Up here.
My question is, does Archera's coverage apply to all services available on Google Cloud or a subset of them?
Great question. So we just launched our public preview of Google Cloud. So we do cover a majority of services, not all yet, but it is on the roadmap for all services in the coming few months. He has one more question, Rob.
Oh, sorry, no more. So just a follow-up question to that. Is Cloud Spanner and BigQuery, like, are they covered right now?
BigQuery, yes. Cloud Spanner, I believe as well, right, Poria? Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, one more. Do I dare launch it?
Go for it.
Nice toss. So our workload is hourly. We do huge simulation testing, so $200 an hour in VM spend for 8 hours and $5 an hour for the next 16 hours.
Right.
Is that something that you would be able to help us with?
So we are a use case for customers with some level of spiky workloads, and our algorithm will monitor your utilization. It can be a custom utilization as far back as you'd like, and we'll actually do an assessment to see if you're eligible. We'll never recommend something that would put you in an underutilization given your spiky workloads. What I would recommend for a customer like you is to do at least a 30-day look back to really get down to your baseline and start with that conservative commitment.
Okay, good, thanks.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.